The courtroom was small and beige and too warm, and my husband was telling the judge that I did not love our son. He did not raise his voice. That was the part that frightened me. Trent had always been loudest when he was losing. This was a man who had already won, or thought he had, and he spoke the way you read a grocery list. "A soldier first, a mother second," he said. "That is who she is, Your Honor. That is who she has always been." I sat with my hands folded in my lap. I had flown men out of places that do not appear on any map. I had held a helicopter steady in weather that turned my co-pilot gray. And I could not make my own hands come apart. They stayed folded, one over the other, knuckles pale, like something the Army had trained and then forgotten to release. His lawyer, a silver man named Grant Mercer, rose and buttoned his jacket. "The petitioner's position is simple," he said. "Major Locke is not an unfit soldier. She is an unfit mother. There is a difference, and the difference is the whole case." Behind Trent, in the front row, his mother pressed a folded tissue to the corner of one eye. Bernadette had a gift for timing. She had cried at our wedding on the same cue. I looked at the table. On the table was a folder Mercer kept touching, the way a man touches a thing he is proud of. Inside it, he said, were the dates. Every birthday I had missed, every school play. Every ordinary evening, our son had asked where his mother was and been told the Army needed her more than he did. 6 years, Mercer said. Ask her to name one birthday she attended. One. My attorney, Diane Prakash, put 2 fingers lightly on my forearm. It meant the same thing it had meant all morning. Not yet. Let it come. You do not win this by shouting, and if you shout, you lose it in front of the one person who matters, which is the judge, and the one person who is watching for it, which is your husband. So I stayed quiet, the way the Army taught me. Observe, collect, do not detonate. And then the back doors of the courtroom opened. They open the way heavy doors open when someone is not asking permission, wide and unhurried, and the light from the hallway came in with him. I heard him before I turned. I heard the particular sound of a service dress shoe on a hard floor, a sound I would know anywhere, a sound that had meant, for 14 years of my life, that a decision had already been made, and I was about to be told what it was. A man in army dress blues walked up the center aisle. He carried a single sheet of paper in one hand, held flat, held carefully the way you carry a thing you have kept a long time. Every head in the room turned. Mercer stopped touching his folder. Judge Delisle set down his glasses. And Trent, my calm husband, the man who read cruelty like a grocery list, went a color I had not seen on him since the night our son was born. The man who walked in carried the one piece of paper that would end my husband's story, and he had written none of it himself. I had. But to understand why a general was standing in a county courthouse for me, I have to tell it from the beginning and from the middle both at once. I have to tell you about the boy, and about the marriage, and about the day I learned that the person who knew exactly where I had been for 6 years was the same person telling a judge I had never been anywhere at all. I met Trent Halverson in the winter of 2015, and I married him a year later, and for a while it was good. I want to be fair about that. It was good. He was funny then, and steady, and he liked that I flew. In the beginning, he told the story at parties. My wife flies Black Hawks, he would say, and there was pride in it, real pride, the kind you cannot fake. I was a captain by then. I had a troop. I came home smelling of jet fuel, and he would put his face in my hair and say I smelled like the best part of his week. We married in the spring of 2016. Bernadette cried at the wedding, and I thought it was joy because I was young, and I did not yet know the difference between a woman who is moved and a woman who is performing. Owen was born in the summer of 2020. I was 30. I had come off a rotation 4 months before, and I remember thinking that the timing was a small mercy, that for once the Army and my body and my luck had all agreed on something. Trent was in the delivery room. He held my hand and he cried, and that crying I believed because it had no audience but me. We named him Owen because it was short and strong and easy for a child to spell. I taught him to spell it before he could really talk. I taught him the way I knew how, the only alphabet I trusted. Oscar, Whiskey, Echo, November. He would say it back to me in the bath, Oscar, Whiskey, Echo, November, and slap the water on the last one. And I would think, there it is. That is the whole reason for everything. But a marriage is a long deployment, and somewhere in the second year of it, the pride turned. It did not turn all at once. Resentment is not a slap. It is a slow leak. You do not notice the tire is going until the car starts pulling to one side, and by then you have been driving crooked for 100 miles. It turned because I got promoted, and he did not. It turned because my phone rang at 2 a.m, and his did not. It turned because I would come home from a month in the field, and Owen would run to me, and I watched something close behind Trent's eyes every time our son chose my arms first. "You missed his first steps," he told me once in the kitchen in 2022. "For a flight physical." "I had the flight physical," I said, "because someone has to keep the roof on." That was the wrong thing to say. It was also true. Both of those can happen at once. His pay had been good, and then it had not been, and my flight status was the thing that made the mortgage a solved problem instead of an open wound. And he knew it, and a man can hate the hand that holds the roof up even while he stands under the roof. I told myself it would pass. Soldiers are very good at telling themselves a bad season will pass. We are trained to endure, and endurance is a wonderful skill and a terrible strategy for a marriage, because while you are enduring, the other person is deciding. I did not know he had already started deciding. I know it now. I know it because on the first morning of the trial, 4 years and a whole life later, Diane Prakash stood with me in the marble hallway outside the courtroom and told me the truth in the plain voice she used for hard things. "Adrian," she said, "I need you to hear me. He is not trying to win Owen." "He filed for full custody," I said. "That is winning Owen." "No," she looked at me. "He is trying to erase you. Full custody is the tool. The goal is a record. A court finding on paper that says the boy's mother was never really his mother. So that in 10 years, when Owen asks, there's a document that answers before you can." The hallway was cold. The courtroom, I would learn, was too warm. I stood between the two temperatures and understood, for the first time, exactly what I was fighting for. Not a schedule, not weekends. My son's memory of who I had been. They called Trent first, and he told the story he had built, and I have to give him this. It was a good story. Lies survive because they are shaped like the truth. His was shaped almost perfectly. He sat in the witness box in a gray suit, and he was calm and sad and reasonable. And he told Judge DeLille that he had done his best to hold a family together around a woman who was always leaving. "I am not angry at the Army," he said. "I want to be clear. I am grateful for her service. But Owen does not have a country. He has a father who was there and a mother who was a photograph on the refrigerator." Mercer walked him through the folder, date by date. The birthday in 2021, when I was deployed. The winter concert in 2023, when I was at a training center in the desert. He read them out like charges, and each one was real, and each one was true, and not one of them was honest, because a true fact told to build a false picture is the oldest lie there is. "How many birthdays, Major?" Mercer said, turning to me, though I was not the one testifying yet. "Name one you attended." I could have named 3. I could have named the pancake breakfast I flew all night to make, landing at 6 in the morning and driving straight to the house in a flight suit so I would not miss him blowing out the candles. But you do not answer questions shouted at you from across a room. You wait for your turn and your own lawyer and the rules that exist precisely so that the loudest man does not win. So I sat, and I held Owen's drawing in my lap under my folded hands, where no one could see it. He had drawn it for me 2 weeks before. It was a helicopter, green, with a stick figure in the door and a smaller stick figure on the ground, and a line connecting them that he had told me was a rope so I could always pull him up. I kept my thumb on that rope while my husband told the court I had never been there to hold it. Here is what the folder did not contain. It did not contain the day in the summer of 2024, during my 2 weeks of leave, when I drove to the house. Trent and I still legally shared and knocked on my own door to take my son to the lake, and Trent opened it 8 inches and told me Owen was napping and it was not a good day. It was 2 in the afternoon. Owen had not napped since he was 3. I could hear a cartoon playing behind him. "We agreed on today," I said. "He's tired, Adrienne. He's been asking for me all week. Don't make it a thing in front of him." And then, quieter, so only I would hear it, in a voice I still hear when I cannot sleep, he leaned toward the gap in the door and he said, "Tell your mother the Army needed her more than you did. That's what he understands anyway." He closed the door. I stood on the porch of my own house in the middle of my leave, and I did not pound on it, and I did not scream, because Owen was on the other side of that door, and I would not let his last picture of me be a woman coming apart on the welcome mat. I got in the car. I wrote down the date and the time. I wrote down the words. I did not know then that I was building a case. I thought I was just trying to survive the drive home without going off the road. But the soldier in me, the one Trent hated, the one who observes and collects and does not detonate, that soldier reached for a pen, and that soldier saved us both. The first crack in his story did not come from me. That is the thing people misunderstand about how the truth wins. It rarely comes from the wounded person's mouth. It comes from the record. The record does not cry, and it does not get rattled on cross-examination, and it does not care whose feelings it breaks. The record came in through a woman named Paula Reynard. Paula Reynard was the guardian ad litem, which is a title that means the court appoints a neutral person whose only client is the child. Not the mother, not the father, the 6-year-old. She had spent 3 months talking to teachers and neighbors and to Owen himself, and she took the stand on the second afternoon with a thick binder and reading glasses on a chain, and she did not look at me or at Trent. She looked at the judge because the judge was the only person in the room she worked for. I requested the sign-in records from the child's after-school program, she said. The center uses electronic badges. Every pickup is time-stamped to the parent or the authorized adult who scans in. It is not a memory, it is a log. Mercer was on his feet. Relevance? Overruled, Judge DeLille said. Sit down, counselor. Reynard opened the binder. The petition lists 6 dates as maternal absences, events the mother is said to have missed. I cross-referenced all 6 against the badge logs and the school's event records. And what did you find? Diane asked. On 4 of the 6 dates, Reynard said. The mother was present, she scanned in. On 2 of those 4, the father did not. On 1 of the 2, the child was signed out by a paid sitter at 5:40 in the afternoon, and the father's badge does not appear in the building that day at all. The warm room got very quiet. I heard Bernadette's tissue stop moving. To be clear, Diane said, the dates the petition calls the mother's absences. 4 of the 6, Reynard said. She was there. And on the days the record shows a parent missing, more often than not, it was the father. Evidence, real evidence. It does not raise its voice. It just sits there, time-stamped, patient, and lets a man's own story walk into it. Mercer tried. He asked whether badge logs could be wrong. Reynard said they could, in theory, at a rate the manufacturer put at under 1 in 100,000 scans. He asked whether the mother might have scanned in and then left. Reynard said the same logs recorded scanouts, and that on 3 of the 4 dates I had scanned out after the event ended, not before it began. So she stayed, Diane said. She stayed, Reynard said. Judge DeLille took off his reading glasses and folded them and set them on the bench, slowly, the way a careful man does a small thing while he thinks about a large one. He looked at the folder Mercer had been so proud of. Then he looked at Trent, for a moment too long. Continue, he said. And I understood that the ground, which had felt like a trapdoor under me for 3 months, had just moved 1 inch back toward level. 1 inch. It is not much, but if you have ever stood on a trapdoor, you know exactly what 1 inch is worth. And then the doors I had heard open in my memory all through the trial finally caught up to the day itself. Diane stood. Your Honor, the respondent calls Brigadier General Elias Thorne. I heard the room turn again, the way it had on the first morning, except this time I was inside the moment instead of remembering it. He came up the aisle in his dress blues, a tall man going gray at the temples, a single silver star on each shoulder, and he carried 1 flat sheet of paper the way another man might carry a photograph of someone he had lost. I had served under Elias Thorne for 2 years. He had been my battalion commander when I was a captain. He had signed my evaluations and grounded me once for arguing with a maintenance officer who turned out to be right, and he had unfrozen me the next week and told me being right was not the same as being smart, and I had never forgotten it. He was a hard man about the things that mattered and a soft one about exactly nothing that did not. He had not come because we were friends. Generals do not fly in for friends. He had come because I had written to his aide 3 weeks earlier and asked 1 question, and the answer to that question was in his hand. He was sworn in. He gave his name and his rank and 31 years of service in a voice built for briefing rooms, and then Diane asked him what he was holding. This is a memorandum dated the 9th of March, 2023, he said. It was submitted through my command. In it, Major Locke requested a curtailment of her deployment. She asked to come home early. The stated reason was her son. And what did the Army do with that request? Diane asked. I approved it, Thorne said. I forwarded it with a recommendation for approval, and it was granted at the next level. The Army told her she could come home. Diane let that sit. Then gently, General, did she come home? No. Why not? Thorne turned the sheet over. On the back, stapled, was a second document. Because a curtailment that affects a soldier's family care plan requires the concurrence of the other parent, he said. The other parent objected. In writing, this is the objection. It is signed by the petitioner, Mr. Halverson. He wrote that returning early would, and I am quoting the form, disrupt the child's stability. The warm room made no sound at all. So, the mother asked to come home to her son, Diane said, and the father filed a document to keep her deployed. That is what the record shows, Thorne said. I gave the order she fought. She asked to come home. The objection in the file is signed by the petitioner. It is not signed by the Army. For the first time in that courtroom, someone had said the true thing out loud, and I felt it go through me like altitude, that light-headed drop when the aircraft finds air under it again after falling. Mercer rose to cross-examine, and I watched him understand, in real time, that there was nothing to cross. You cannot rattle a document. He asked whether the general had a personal relationship with me. Thorne said he had commanded roughly 800 soldiers and had a personal relationship with none of them, and a professional obligation to all of them, and that he was here under the same obligation, and that if the court wished, he would state for the record that he had grounded me once, and it had not made me like him. The gallery made a sound that was almost a laugh, and Judge Delisle did not gavel it down. Mercer sat, and Trent, my calm husband, looked down at the table because his own signature was now lying on the evidence cart 6 feet from the judge, and he could not make himself look at the one piece of paper in that courtroom that he actually had written. After the general stepped down, the rest of it came apart, the way a knot comes apart once you finally have the right end of the string. Slowly and then all at once. Diane called Cora Whitfield next. Miss Whitfield was Owen's school counselor, a round, kind woman with a lanyard full of little enamel pins, and she had been subpoenaed, and she was plainly unhappy to be there, which is exactly the kind of witness a judge believes. Mercer's folder had contained a letter. It was on school letterhead, and it was signed with Cora Whitfield's name, and it said that Owen showed signs of distress and attachment problems that the counselor associated with his mother's frequent absences. It was one of the strongest things in Trent's case, because it did not come from an angry husband. It came from a neutral professional who worked with the child. Diane handed Miss Whitfield the letter. Do you recognize this document? Cora Whitfield read it. Her face changed. I have thought a great deal since about how a good person looks when they discover their name has been forged. It is not anger first. It is a kind of hurt confusion, as if the ground has told them a lie. This is not my letter, she said. Is that your signature? No, it is close, but no, I do not loop my Y like that. She turned it toward the light. And this seal. Our school has never used this seal. Our real letterhead has the district crest in the corner. I do not know what this is. I never wrote this. I never would. Owen is a bright, well-attached child who misses his mom when she travels, which is normal, and who lights up when she comes home, which I have seen with my own eyes, at 3 separate pickups. He had not just lied about me, he had put words in a good woman's mouth and printed them under a school's name. And that, I think, is the moment the room stopped seeing Trent as a sad, reasonable father, and started seeing something else, because a judge and a bailiff and a court reporter can all forgive a man for being wounded and bitter, but a forged document has a smell, and everyone in that room could suddenly smell it. Diane entered the real letterhead beside the fake one. They marked the forgery as an exhibit. Judge Delisle looked at it for a long time. Then Diane called Renata Dooley, and Renata told the other half. Renata is a fellow aviator, a chief warrant officer, and my friend of 11 years, and she does not decorate the truth. She testified about the family care plan, which is a real Army document that every single parent and every dual military and every deployable parent must keep current. A plan that says exactly who cares for the child when the soldier cannot. She testified that mine was the most meticulous she had ever seen. Powers of attorney kept current. Backup caregivers named and briefed. A binder, she said, with tabs. In 11 years, Renata said, I have known Major Locke to reschedule her own promotion ceremony so it would not fall on the boy's first day of school. I have known her to fly a red-eye and drive straight to a pancake breakfast in her flight suit. The idea that she chose the unit over her child is not just wrong, it is backwards. Half of us plan our lives around the mission. She planned the mission around the boy every single time the Army let her, and she fought the times it would not. I want to tell you, I stayed composed. I mostly did. But when Renata said the mission around the boy, my eyes filled, and I let one go, exactly one, and wiped it before it reached my jaw, and Diane had told me that was allowed. That a mother who never cries reads as cold, and a mother who floods reads as unstable, and that the truth was somewhere in one honest tear. So I spent it, and I put the rest away. Because I was not done. The last thing was the money, and the money was the ugliest part, and I needed my hands steady for it. The money is where people finally believe you, and I have thought about why. I think it is because a lie about love is arguable and a lie about a bank statement is not. Numbers do not have feelings for anyone to misread. They just add up, or they do not. Diane put the account records on the screen. We had a joint account from the marriage and a small, separate savings account we had opened for Owen when he was born, the kind with a picture of a cartoon acorn on the passbook, the kind you start with $50 in a plan. Into Owen's account had gone birthday checks from my parents and my flight pay bonus one good year, and a little every month. And by the spring of 2025, it held a bit over $31,000. It was his. We had said out loud that it was his, for school, for a first car, for whatever a whole life needed that we could not yet see. In the 6 weeks after Trent filed for custody, that account went to zero. Not all at once. He was careful. 2,000 here, 4,000 there, a transfer labeled tuition when Owen was in a free public kindergarten, a transfer labeled medical when the boy had not seen a doctor except for a flu shot I took him to myself. $31,000 moved into an account in his name only, in the same weeks that he stood in a lawyer's office and swore he could barely afford to care for the child he was fighting so hard to keep. And there was one more line, and Diane saved it for last, because Diane understood rhythm the way a pilot understands it. Major Locke, she said, during this same period, was Mr. Halverson receiving a housing allowance connected to your service? Yes, I said. It was my turn in the box by then. The dependent rate. It is paid because a service member has a family to house. It is meant for Owen's roof. And where did that go? The same account. His account. Not the mortgage. The mortgage went unpaid for 2 months. I found out because the bank sent the notice to the house, and Owen's teacher mentioned he had said they might have to move. The gallery did not gasp. It was worse than a gasp. It was the silence of a room full of adults doing arithmetic and not liking the answer. Then Diane read the texts. They had come in on discovery from Trent's own phone because he had backed it up to a shared family account and never thought to sever it. And that is the thing about people who plan betrayals. They write it down. They always write it down. The plan is so clear in their heads that they forget the head is not private. To his mother, Diane said, dated the 2nd of April, 2025. She read it flat, no theater, which was the only way to read a thing like that. Quote, once she's in the field again, we file. She cannot fight it in time. By the time she's back, it is a done deal, and the boy is used to me having him. End quote. Judge DeLille asked to see the phone records himself. He read them for a full minute, which is a very long time, in a silent courtroom, and I watched Bernadette in the front row, and I watched the exact moment the tissue stopped moving in her hand and stayed still in her lap. Because even a mother who has been performing grief for 2 days cannot perform through the sound of her son's plan, read out loud in her own child's words. Once she is in the field, DeLille read aloud, slowly to the record. We file. She cannot fight it in time. He set the phone down. Mr. Mercer, he said, does your client wish to offer any context for this message? Mercer stood and opened his mouth, and for the first time in 2 days, the silver man had nothing in the folder. Your Honor, he said, we would ask for a brief recess. I imagine you would, Judge DeLille said. Denied. Sit down. The ruling came the next morning, and I almost did not go in for it. I had learned in the field that the moment after the hard thing is over is the moment you are least ready for, and I was afraid of what I would do in a public room when it finally lifted. But Diane said a mother shows up for the ruling, and she was right. So I put on my dress uniform because a judge should see the whole truth of a person. And I sat in the too warm room one last time with Owen's helicopter drawing folded in my breast pocket over my heart. Judge DeLille did not make a speech. Good judges rarely do. He read from a paper in a level voice, and the whole thing took less than 4 minutes, and those 4 minutes rebuilt my life. He found that the petition for sole custody was not supported by the evidence. He found that the documentary record, including the child care logs and the school records, contradicted the petition's central claims. He found, and he used this word, that a letter submitted as evidence was fabricated, and that the matter would be referred to the district attorney for review. He found that funds belonging to the child had been improperly transferred and were to be restored in full, with the family home preserved and the arrears cured from the recovered amount. And then he said the sentence I had stopped letting myself imagine. The petition is denied. Primary physical custody is awarded to the respondent, Major Adrienne Locke. I didn't smile. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect the smile, the fist, the turn to the gallery. I did none of it. I had wanted my son. I had not wanted a victory. And the difference between those two things is the whole difference between the person I was afraid the trial would make me and the person I wanted Owen to have. Across the aisle, Trent put his face in his hands. Not for the cameras. There were no cameras. He put his face in his hands the way a man does when the story he told himself for years finally runs out of road. And for one strange second, I felt something that was not triumph and was not even anger. It was closer to grief. I had loved him once. I had married him in the spring with his mother crying in the front row. Somewhere in there had been a real man, and that man had drowned himself slowly in his own resentment, and no court order was going to bring him back up. Bernadette did not look at me. She looked at her son with his face in his hands, and whatever was on her face then, it was the first honest thing I had seen her wear in 2 days. I stood, and I thanked the judge, because you thank the judge, and I walked out of the too-warm room into the cold marble hall, and I kept walking, out the doors, down the steps, into the parking garage where no one could see me. And there, standing between a concrete pillar and my own car, with my dress uniform on, and my son's drawing over my heart, I finally let my hands come apart. They shook. They shook badly. I put them flat against the cold hood of the car, and I let them, and I breathed the way they teach you to breathe when the aircraft is doing something you did not ask it to do. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, and slowly the shaking stopped, and I was still standing, and my son was mine. The grace part is the part people always want to skip, and I understand why, because grace is less satisfying than revenge in the moment and more satisfying than anything else for the rest of your life. Here's what I could have done. With a forgery referred to the district attorney and a paper trail on the money, I could have pushed for the maximum on all of it. I could have made Trent's next several years a corridor of court dates. Diane laid the options out for me plainly, without a thumb on the scale, the way I trust a person to. I did not take the maximum. 2 months after the ruling, in a mediator's office with beige walls, not unlike the courtrooms, Trent signed the papers that returned every dollar to Owen's account, all $31,000 of it, plus the housing allowance he had diverted, and he signed a structured visitation agreement, supervised at first, stepping up as a parenting coordinator, judged it safe. And when it was done, I told Diane to write to the district attorney and say that the mother did not wish to press for charges on the forgery, provided the restitution held and the agreement was kept. I did not do that for Trent. I want to be clear. I did it for a 6-year-old who was going to grow up either as the son of a father with a criminal record for forging a letter to steal him, or as the son of a father who had done a terrible thing and been stopped and made to put it right. One of those is a heavier thing for a child to carry, and it is not the one people assume. There was a porch conversation, too. Bernadette came to the house, once, in the fall. She stood on the step and did not come in, and she held her handbag with both hands like a shield, and she said one honest sentence. And I have decided to believe it was the truest thing she ever said to me. "I should have said something," she said. "I knew, and I did not. I am sorry." I did not tell her it was all right, because it was not all right. But I told her Owen loved his grandmother and that supervised, structured in daylight. She was welcome to be one, and she cried then, and for the first time in 10 years, I believed the tears, because they cost her something to shed. And I told Owen the truth, in the size a 6-year-old can hold. I did not tell him his father lied to a judge. I told him that his mom and dad both loved him and could not live in the same house, and that his dad had been so scared of losing him that he did some things the wrong way, and that grown-ups sometimes get scared and get it wrong, and that it did not mean his father did not love him because he did in his own broken way, and that Owen was allowed to love him back. Then I ran the bath, and my son slapped the water and said, "Oscar, whiskey, echo, November," and slapped it again on the last one, and I thought, there it is. There is the whole reason for everything, still there. They had tried to erase me from his story, and he had spelled his own name in my alphabet without even knowing it was a rescue. A year has gone by now. I put in for a stabilized assignment, an instructor posting at the aviation school, and I got it. And it means I sleep in the same zip code as my son every night. And I am home for the birthdays now, all of them, and the school plays, and the ordinary evenings, which turn out to be the ones that matter most. Owen is 7. He can spell his whole name in the phonetic alphabet and half of mine, and he has decided he will fly Black Hawks like his mom, And I have told him he has to be smart and not just brave, because being right is not the same as being smart. And I did not tell him I learned that from a general who once grounded me and then flew across the country to stand up in a courthouse and read one sheet of paper into the record. I saw General Thorne once more at a change of command, and I thanked him again, and he waved it off the way hard men do. He said, "You wrote the memo, Major." I just carried it in. And then he said, the thing I keep. The Army did not save your boy. Your own discipline did. You kept the record when you had every reason to fall apart. Keep teaching that. That is the whole job now. So let me teach it to you, because you are the reason I am telling this at all. If my story has taught you anything, let it be this. They can rewrite where you were. They cannot rewrite who you are. Not if you keep the record. Not if you refuse to become the thing they need you to be in order to win. The strongest answer to a lie is not a louder lie. It is a folded pair of hands, a written date, a kept receipt, and the patience to let the truth walk into the room on its own feet. If any part of this reached you, please share it. Somewhere out there is a parent being told they were never really a parent, a soldier being told their service was a selfishness, someone standing on the porch of their own life while the door is held 8 inches open. Send this to them. Let them know the record keeps, and the truth is patient, and they are not as alone as the too warm room wants them to feel. Tell me in the comments about a time you stayed quiet and let the truth do the work, or a time you wish you had. I read them. I answer more than you would think. And if you want more stories about courage and justice and the quiet kind of hope that keeps its receipts, subscribe and stay with us, because there is always another one coming, and someone always needs to hear it. Thank you for sitting with me through this one. Thank you for believing a mother when a courtroom almost did not. It means more than I can spell in any alphabet. The end.